Hi there, my name is Tate Wendell, and I'm here to talk about why home economics, in my opinion, should be taught in our everyday school system. How many of you around here, around the room, how many of you know 3 recipes that you know off the top of your head that you can mix the ingredients, take the measurements, all with no issue and prepare a meal? I personally cannot do that. I maybe know 1, maybe 2 off the top of my head. And the reason for this is because I didn't have, that's the only reason, I just don't know it, but I didn't have home economics growing up. Not saying that there isn't electives, there are still electives where you can learn to cook after school. A lot of elementary and middle schools have this. But over the years, over the 20th century, home economics was in every school basically, and it was teaching kids cooking and other household stuff. But over the years, for the past 20 years I should say, the money for this, school districts are deciding not to use the money towards home ec. They've decided to use the money towards programs that will further you in college, and also more technological based classes as well. Sometimes cooking has burning, cutting, all this bad stuff, but that comes along with cooking, and I think that there's still a lot of reasons why it still should be taught in schools. And I'm gonna get into this right now. I'm gonna play a 25-second clip real quick.
It's like urban homesteading.
Yeah, I think you're hitting home on a really good point here, because I think you're starting to see that there's this innate desire for the youth to actually engage in home economics, regular economics. They have that whole desire when they're young to open up a lemonade stand and be an entrepreneur. So I think this is a good way to foster. And I think in discussing what you're talking about is a lot of millennials right now are focused.
Now that I've explained to you why schools have geared their attention towards other projects for students, let me tell you why it would be wise to revert and go back to teaching at home economics. Teaching students, kids who eat processed food at home, know that it's just one combined pile of food, and it is no consideration of how it's made or anything like that, and they just eat it. They don't focus on what's in it. They don't focus on the ingredients. And so by the school changing the mindset of the student, I think that a whole nother generation of kids would understand a little bit more about cooking. And I'm not a huge cooker. I just appreciate it and have to cook on my own at home, and so it's been on my mind a lot over the past year. When schools teach to cook, the concept of food to them changes. And instead of perceiving the food just as a finished item, they'll see each individual ingredient. And as they get used to preparing these various types of foods and eating them, they'll shift their focus from processed foods, which have no guarantee of preparation, mind you, no guarantee. You don't see what's going on in the back. How do you know? And they begin to embrace each ingredient and embrace their own food, because if they cook it themselves. It's an important life skill. It's a physiological need to want to eat, and without food you die. So how is it that one of the or I get shelters above, but out of the 3 things you need to survive, one of them you don't really care where your food comes from. You don't you know what I mean? You don't care where one of your 3 basic needs to survive is. Okay. So schools should be able to teach students individually, so that way when they leave school, they are able to live their independent lives and know how to don't need to depend on others for their food for basic survival. So many kids in the millennial era have no idea how to prepare food, and the package box, instructions in adding water, microwave, and that's not really how you should be eating. That's not considered cooking. The cooking skills shouldn't be learned when the kids are already out of school. Instead, they should be taught when they're in school, so that way when they hit 14, 15, they keep working on it, 16, 17, 18, keep working on it, And then once they're in college and they gotta fend for themselves, they'll be talented cooks. People are more likely to eat what they prepare. So when students are taught at an early age how to cook, the developing habits of preparing food, even when they're at home. So if you leave your son at home and he has a bunch of ingredients, I'm not saying like an 8-year-old should be using a stove, but when he's 15 years old and he's hungry after school and you're still at work, why not have your child whip up a grilled cheese? Something, or maybe something a little more sophisticated, but my point is that if you have a kid that knows how to cook for themselves, it really helps out in the long run because they're not going to be hungry, and it lets them enjoy it more because they know that when they put their own hands in their ingredients and are making their own food and they know exactly what's in it, it makes it more an enjoyable experience. When they have the different types of ingredients, they can figure out if it's organic or not, and they'll learn to value nutrients. I don't think that home economics should be specifically taught necessarily, like just specifically that class. But what I do think should be taught is either that or a nutrition class. Because if the kids can understand that what they're putting in their body that's not homemade or not good for them, they need to know what's in that. And I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary Super Size Me, but I mean that's a great example of just bringing education, and then with the education, people's eating habits do change. Now that I've explained cooking to students teaching kids to cook would be very beneficial, here's what I think we should do next. I think that the government should implement and introduce cooking classes to today's generation of students, just like any other subject, and the kids should be able to embrace and practice due to the benefits when they leave school, and get to go home and cook. Right now you have kids focusing, or not kids, but parents and kids focusing on what they're eating at like lunchtime, focusing on school gardens, but they're not focusing on cooking in general when they eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I don't understand why that is, why they focus on school lunches when there's other times to eat that they should also teach as well. And I think these should all be free. If it's an elective after school, I understand why you might charge someone for it if it's a public school, but I think all these things should be free for the next generation of children to learn how to cook for themselves, their family, and their friends, and perhaps a date, never know.